This week's parsha is the most important parsha in the entire Torah. You may ask, why is this week's parsha the most important in the entire Torah? Well, let me tell you. Parsha Vayigash continues the story exactly where last week's parsha left off. We have Yehuda pleading the brother's case, Yosef no longer being able to keep up the ruse, the greatest pregnant pause in human history. I am Yosef. Is my father still alive? Yosef reassuring his brothers that this whole series of events were orchestrated by God in order to provide food for the family. The brothers telling Yaakov that Yosef is alive and bringing him down to Egypt. God speaking to Yaakov and reassuring him that his family will become a nation in Egypt and that God will surely bring them out. The listing of all those who went down to Egypt, the big reunion between Yaakov and Yosef, the brothers and Yaakov meeting Pharaoh and being settled in the land of Goshen. But none of that is why this is the most important parsha in the entire Torah. The reason this is the most important parsha is because maybe it tells us that we've been missing the bigger picture in the last several parshot. Starting 2 weeks back in Parsha Vayigash, we read Ela Toldot Yaakov, Yosef ben Shivasra. This is the legacy of Yaakov. Yosef was 17 years old. This positions the story as being the story of Yosef, about his being favored, his being sold as a slave, and his adventures in Egypt. Yosef is the main character. And that's why we as a people are named after him. Our religion is called Yosefism, and we're called Yosefs. Wait, what's that you say? It's not called Yosefism? It's called Judaism after Judah? Well, that's odd. Why are we named after Yehuda and not after Yosef, the main character? Of course, there are historical and geopolitical reasons that explain how we got the name Jews and Judaism, but I'm not interested in historical explanations. What can the Parsha tell us about the deeper spiritual meaning behind it? I contend that these final 4 parashot of the book of Bereshit are not the story of Yosef. It's actually 2 dueling stories, the story of Yosef and the story of Yehuda. While Yosef may get more airtime, I don't think he's actually the main character. We know the Yosef story well. Thank you, Andrew Lloyd Webber. But let's quickly recap the Yehuda story. He was the one who suggested selling Yosef into slavery. He then seems to go off, and we have the story about his children marrying Tamar, each one passing away, and then Yehuda lying to Tamar about giving her his 3rd son to marry, and then lying with Tamar, who is pretending to be a prostitute. Tamar confronts him, and he owns up to the errors of his ways. Later, after the sons bring food back from Egypt and require more, it's Yehuda who points out that they can't go back without Benjamin. He takes responsibility for Benjamin and guarantees Benjamin's safety. When Yosef's goblet is found in Benjamin's sack, it's Yehuda who represents the family and pleads with Yosef, offering himself in Benjamin's place. And once Yaakov was on his way down to Egypt, it's Yehuda he sends before him. And next week we will see that it's Yehuda who's blessed with the kingship of the Jewish people. So we have Yosef, a favorite son, righteous, gifted with both prophecy and leadership. And you have Yehuda, who starts as someone who sells his brother into slavery and then goes through a complete transformation, emerging as the leader of the family. In a sense, Yosef is the tzaddik, while Yehuda is the Baal Teshuvah. And who are we named after? Yehuda, the Baal Teshuvah. And therein lies a profound truth about Judaism. None of us are perfect. None of us behave exactly as we should at every moment. Now, hopefully, our mistakes aren't quite as severe as selling our brother into a slavery, but nonetheless, we all make our share of mistakes. But that, in and of itself, isn't a problem in Judaism. It's what we do next that matters. Do we settle into bad habits, or do we learn from our mistakes and grow from them, like Yehuda? But the parsha isn't the story of Yehuda or the story of Yosef. It's these 2 stories merged as one. And such is the reality of the Jewish nation. We need both the tzaddik and the Baal Teshuvah, both the Yosefs and the Yehudas, to be complete. Looking at the story as a whole, Yosef's role was to unite and sustain the family, but only temporarily. His role was to prepare the family for Yehuda's eventual leadership. And just as it was in the time of our forefathers, so will it be in our future. We all know that Judaism believes in the coming of Mashiach, a descendant of the house of David who will usher in the Messianic era. But what's less known is that in our tradition, there's actually 2 Mashiachs. Mashiach ben David, the one we usually talk about, David being a descendant of Yehuda, and Mashiach ben Yosef, who will unite the Jewish people, lead them in battle, and pave the way for Mashiach ben David. Yosef and Yehuda's stories are joined together in biblical times, in our time, and in our messianic future. That is one reason why this is the most important parsha in the Torah. The other reason is that the most important piece of Torah is whatever piece of Torah you have in front of you right now. Shabbat Shalom and Am Yisroel Chai.